President, every week I try to get down on the Senate floor and talk about someone in my state who is making or has made our state a better place for all of us. It's actually one of my favorite parts of the whole week. I know the pages really enjoy it. It's what I call our Alaskan of the Week. And it's one of the most fulfilling things that I do. Now, no doubt many here in the chamber and the people watching from home and up in the gallery have seen pictures or television shows about Alaska. Hopefully you've been up there. My state has captured the country's imagination. There's cable shows on Alaska, wonderful shows, and for good reason. There's so much about Alaska that's awe-inspiring. Our long expanses of tundra, mountain ranges, glaciers, salmon-filled streams. So everybody watching back home or listening, or we want you to come to Alaska if you haven't already been, come again. It'll be the trip of a lifetime, I guarantee it. But a state is different than a community. A state is where people go. A community is where people live. And it takes good, strong, and generous people to build a community. Mr. President, this week, I'd like to recognize someone in Alaska who has spent his entire adult lifetime building community in Alaska. His name is George Brown, who with his wife Peggy ran one of the most popular diners, one of the greatest restaurants in Anchorage since 1955. The Lucky Wishbone is that place that for decades people from all walks of life, veterans, politicians, oil workers, hospital employees, you name it, they came to the Lucky Wishbone, converged on this wonderful establishment in Anchorage for some of the best fried chicken and best strawberry shakes ever. Guarantee it if you go. I know from firsthand experience, trust me. George Brown was born in rural Wisconsin in 1922. He joined the National Guard at the tender age of 17, and his unit was sent to Alcatraz Island to guard the Golden Gate Bridge. At 21, he had already risen to the rank of Master Sergeant when he qualified for Officers Candidate School, and in 1943, he finished flight school at Luke Field, Arizona, as a second lieutenant in the Army Air Corps. In that same year, George met the love of his life, Peggy, and married soon after. After he was married, George received orders to fly B-24s across the Himalayas during World War II, a mission in an area famously known simply as the Hump. George earned the Distinguished Flying Cross and Air Medal for his bravery and service during World War II. Incidentally, the late great Senator Ted Stevens from Alaska, whose desk I occupy here on the floor, also flew the Hump with the Army Air Corps during World War II, and I know was a friend of George's. So after the war, George and Peggy and their two children made their way to Alaska to forge a new life. Eventually, that life found shape in a building that George built by hand in downtown Anchorage, the Lucky Wishbone. Its doors opened on November 30th, 1955, in a kind of living room for the community where you could also get great food was born in Anchorage. Mr. President, as you know, most walls don't talk, but the walls of the Lucky Wishbone do talk. They're filled with pictures charting Anchorage and Alaska's history throughout the decades. These photos tell the story of a hard-scrabble territory, Alaska, that fought for self-determination and gained citizenship and statehood in 1959. They tell the story of a town, Anchorage, rebuilt after being hit by the most powerful earthquake ever recorded in North America, 9.2 on the Richter scale. It lasted for 5 minutes. The walls of the Lucky Wishbone tell the story of a state brimming with excitement, When the largest oil field in North America, Prudhoe Bay, was discovered on the North Slope, and tens of thousands of jobs were created for Alaskans and Americans. They tell the story of the crash in oil prices in the 1980s, the hard and long recovery. They tell the story about how through it all, a community and our citizens in Alaska relied on each other. And as all this history was in the making, George and his wife Peggy, who by then had 4 children, went to work every day. They knew their customers by name, and they continued to make the best food in town. Sadly, Peggy died in 2011 after she and George celebrated 67 years together. George continued to go to work every day. I saw him there. And he continued to fly his plane until he was 94 years old. A wonderful, gracious, tough, patriotic Alaskan and a great American. Mr. President, George passed away earlier this week. An amazing life. He was 96 years old. He left behind 2 of his 4 children, Patricia and Corky, lots of grandchildren, great-grandchildren and nieces and nephews. The Lucky Wishbone, one of his many legacies, will live on. This great restaurant is now passed down to his daughter Patricia and 2 long-term employees, and George and Peggy's memory will also live on with it.